The United States is currently seeking her extradition. We are deeply grateful to the government of Canada for its assistance and its steadfast commitment to the rule of law.
U.S. prosecutors, sharing two sets of indictments. That was Monday, talking about the extradition of CFO, I got to get this pronunciation right, Meng Wanzhou with Huawei. Richard Curlin, immigration lawyer, you're joining us right here. How does this process of extradition work, given the countries Canada, U.S., and China involved?
Well, what's supposed to happen in a garden variety extradition is that the Americans charge, the Canadian Justice Minister signs off, and the process unfolds. But not now. What's different here is President Trump. President Trump waded in to the extradition process, effectively changing the case from an extradition based on fraud into a pawn game in trade negotiations between U.S. and China, leaving Canada caught between a rock and a hard place, between the American elephant of economic power and the China gorilla of global throw weight. And so right now, today, the U.S. commences trade negotiations with China. President Trump says they'll give our person detained here in Canada a miss if China asks for it. So what's really going on? Is this really an extradition case about Iranian sanctions and bank fraud, wire fraud, or is President Trump trying to get an advantage on the trade negotiation playing field?
So what do you anticipate is going to happen if China's foreign ministry has gone to stateside and said to drop this request for extradition? Do you think that would play out and they would drop the request altogether?
Clock ticks starting yesterday. 30 days Canada has to make a decision. The Justice Minister has to officially sign personally the extradition paperwork for the case to move forward. If the Americans can conclude their trade negotiations within that time, America might pull the rug, stop the case, and relieve Canada's headache. So everyone's waiting to see how this plays out. Likely outcome? She remains at liberty in her multi-million-dollar mansion in Vancouver for years to come as the extradition process unfolds.
So with Ms. Meng, I guess everything being up in the air right now, what does this do for relations with Canada and China? And how many people have been asking you, is it safe to travel?
Well, there you go. I mean, since last night, I've been receiving email from colleagues and people across the country asking, is it safe for me to visit China? I'm shocked. But as a matter of precaution, people should register with Global Affairs. There's a website for that. Make PDF copies of your passports. Signed advance consent releases for people to represent you in case something goes wrong. And to add luster, include media on your consent forms.
What's the best thing Canada can do in this entire case as trade negotiations are going on with U.S. and China?
Keep the channels of communication open. This is a top priority for the government of Canada, no doubt about that. And my goodness, follow the rules. Let things play out on the American side. On the Canadian side, we have a judicial process that will unfold. There's a first-rate defense team for this detained or no longer detained individual. That will have impact, but I don't see the skies clearing during the summer, during the pre-election period, October 2019, unless the Americans say so.
And what do you think is the best learning lesson of this all, policy-wise, given what's taking place?
Lesson learned is, if you have $3 billion in your family, you can afford a direct nonstop between China and Mexico.
Money talks. Okay, well, listen, we're going to follow this in timeline of resolution. What do you anticipate? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year?
Well, the telltale, this could all be gone in 31 days. I'm hoping for that resolution because it affects the economies of China, U.S., and Canada, plus our diplomatic and trade relations. On the other hand, political expediency being what it is, it's safer for politicians to make no decision and allow the process to unfold, guaranteeing headlines and media coverage for our Canadian Prime Minister, who will appear statesmanlike and a power broker between the two largest economies on the planet. No political costs, lots of political gain for our Prime Minister. It's a soup.
Well, we're going to watch it over these next 30 days, as you mentioned. Richard, appreciate you coming by.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, listen, before we go to break, we're going to check in with Greg Harper.